Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give show. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today we have Sue Mills from Sassy Marketing. Sue started off a journey working in one of the big banks. It was one of the red ones. And she then left that and went into the medical industry. And after a while, she decided to start her own company, but she soon learned she wasn't quite ready for that step. And her own self-assessment, she actually decided to go back into corporate and gain a couple of key skills. And she talks about what those skills are within the podcast. And then after a little while, she actually had started a family, and then she seamlessly went into her own marketing agency. And she gives you some great advice during this podcast for business owners on how to market in the modern world. So please grab your pens and papers for the ready as I hand you over to Sue Mills from Sassy Marketing. If you're enjoying listening to these journeys, just letting you know we have a community for ex-career people running profitable businesses just like you. It's called BLG Boost. You get exclusive access to a forum of like-minded peers answering your most pressing questions 24/7. You get specific action tips to solve your most common challenges. You get trusted suppliers to remove lost time. You also get access to member exclusive offers to save you money. You also get access to myself as a coach directly on a one-on-one basis. You get weekly videos from global experts. And finally, you get monthly webinars solving topics mentioned in popular threads. If you're tired of being alone and want to rapidly grow your dream business, go to buildlivegive.com/BLG Boost. This link is in the show notes. Please check it out. Okay, I will see you inside. Welcome, Sue Mills from Sassy Marketing to the Build, Live, Give show. We're going to get to know a lot about you today, Sue, but why don't you start with just a little bit of your backstory?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me today. A bit of my backstory. Well, I suppose I started my career in corporate, like a lot of us do. I worked for the bank, one of the big four, for probably the majority of 10 years in the financial sector. I was basically a banker in the medical industry for a long time and loved every minute of it. So much so I jumped ship and wanted to start business for myself, and started my first business basically early 2010 as a finance broker, and found out that I needed to learn a hell of a lot more before I could actually do something like that for real. And so I returned to the corporate world and worked in sales and marketing for the next 5 years or so, really earning my stripes and knowing what I needed to learn. And about 5 years after that, Sassy Marketing was born, and here I am.
Brilliant. And if you, it's interesting that you actually left and then went back. What were some of those key things that you thought weren't right or you were missing at the time to get you to go back to corporate for a short period?
Yeah, strategy. It was just one of those things where you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. And for me, a very large part of that was all about planning in your business to know where you've got to head and how you've got to position yourself and market yourself to be able to attract the client that you want. My business actually was quite successful as far as bringing clients in and making a turnover, but I nearly killed myself in the process because I wasn't scaled appropriately and I didn't work my business in a way that it was sustainable. So I had a lot to learn.
Yeah, look, I think that's for a lot of people that are thinking of leaving corporate. I think that's, one of the reasons why we set up the BLG community is to help people, because it is very, very different to that huge infrastructure that you have in corporate. If I
Exactly.
sort of take a slightly different angle for a moment, outside of work, so what's something that your friends or family would know about you that the BLG community wouldn't?
That I love music. I used to be a bit of a singer as well.
Oh,
Um,
great.
had a band in high school and enjoyed myself doing that way. So I'm actually quite a creative person, even though I work in the services field.
And do you ever grace the stage these days?
Absolutely not. No.
No.
I won't put people through it unless you may find me on a karaoke stage one late night when I'm on a mummy's night out. That might be the only time that happens.
Yeah, well, we've had a couple of karaoke fans and dancers to this question, and certainly Clarissa Hughes is one of those. So shout out to Clarissa. She loves the karaoke, and I find it quite difficult when I go to the Philippines. I'm not a great singer, but they are brilliant at singing, and the gap is huge. So there was one girl in my team who actually was an international singer, and she was brilliant. So I just always got to do a duo with her, and she made me seem good. But the worst
You
singer
look
in
good.
the
Excellent.
Philippines is by far one of the best singers in Australia. It's a classic. And you talked about the change. So you went from you know large corporate into your own business, then back into
Mm,
corporate, and then back into your business again. Just
yeah.
take me to that last moment or the last time that you decided this is it. I'm now ready to go to back to your own business.
Yeah. Do you know what, Paul? It was actually a lot more seamless than that. It kind of
Right.
happened very organically for me the second time round. I left corporate because I decided to start my family. I fell pregnant.
Right.
And I had planned to take a year off work when I had my baby, but um, for some reason, something was niggling in the back of my mind. And when I stopped work to have my baby, I basically said to my boss, look, I won't be back. So let's use the time while I'm still here to set you up with somebody else and get them up to speed before I leave. And I didn't quite know what it was going to be, but all I knew was with my baby and with the family, I wasn't ready to go back into corporate and spend 18-hour days anymore. And it was in that sort of process where I was at home and I was nesting and I was doing all of these things that I started to find myself building products and building things, and I had no clue what I was doing or where it was headed. But I sort of thought, okay, I'll do a little bit of consulting just to keep my mind occupied whilst having my child. I had a very easy baby and she was giving me absolutely no trouble. So, I found the time to be able to do some stuff, and very inspired Sue Mills Consulting I was back then. And so I ended up building and formulating a business that people started finding me who were making the jump from corporate to wanting to go into their own businesses, and I helped them with that strategy side, and I helped them with that marketing side of things. That's often a bit of a gap, and I just ended up finding my niche, finding my space in the world, where I think I spent most of my life trying to find it, and it just kind of happened along in that way as I was starting my family. Very organic, very simple. It was meant to be, I think.
Oh, well, that's brilliant when it does that. And I could have put all my money in the world on the fact that easy baby, normally a girl. Having both, I know the girls at that age are normally far easier.
Exactly.
And you talked about it happened organically, etc. Were there any sort of key fears that you had at the time, or anything that was keeping you a little edgy at night?
Yeah, I was really quite petrified that I wasn't doing it right. I still had in the back of my mind that fear from the first time that I did it. And, whilst the business was successful, I was wildly unhappy. And I was in such a happy space in my life, in my family life and in my work life at the time, that I was really worried about wrecking that by, not doing it the right way. So for me, it was really I suppose a bit of a hurdle to overcome, to just go for it and go. And it was all about not having the pressure to do something really well. And, I know it's not a very woman's lib thing to say at the time, but, my husband was so key for me to be comfortable in bringing my business to fruition where I needed to be, because he took care of all of that stuff at that time, and I didn't need to rush anything. I could do it as the business and I was ready to do it, take things to market as the business and I were ready to take it to market. So, it was great.
Great. And sort of balancing that family, because I know that the first time you said it was hard because you just worked yourself into the ground. Did you find that, having to look after now a family, that put some positive constraints on you?
It's still very hard. I still struggle with it, today. It's something that I think is a struggle for everyone, to make sure that you try to be all things to everyone. And the business started taking off and doing really well. And in that sort of time, you are stuck. But when you have a great support system behind you and you have scaled your business in the appropriate way, it's not as hard as what it could be. So.
And if I look at some of the help, obviously you got great help from your family and friends, as you said there. But what's some other help that you've got outside of family and friends to help you through this part, through this journey?
I've made some great collaborative partners, in over my time of working at Sassy, and in meeting other people with businesses of the same ilk, same like-minded people, and you're able to share the load with them. We don't have to, in today's world, do everything in our business. We've got other people that are experts at other areas that you're not. So share that work. And that to me has been a real key this time around. So in that process of building those collaborations and building those, I suppose, strategic alliances in work, I've been able to be a lot more relaxed about it and be able to find, more balance or a better balance, if you will, than what I was in the past.
Yeah, and look, we've had plenty of guests in the past that have talked about that competitiveness within corporate, that there's that pyramid and you're all fighting for the next job up the rung, and it's a lot more competitive. Whereas I, like you, I just find being in your own small business, there's enormous collaborative opportunities, and it's very rare that you'll get someone doing exactly what you're doing, targeting the exact same clients at the exact same time. So we all help each other out, and that's what I love, and that's what I love about hearing people like you coming on this podcast and sharing your story, because there'll be people out there listening and saying, great, I'd love to collaborate and work with Sue. She's really great at marketing. I might be good at other things. So I think that's the real benefit of being outside of corporate, because corporate I think, is still quite competitive.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And I don't necessarily think in a positive way sometimes either. The competition becomes quite vile in my experience sometimes for a specific job. Whereas, with something like this, I teach it to my clients when I say, you could stand next to 5 of your competitors right next to each other. You can all do the same thing, but how you do it, the values you bring to it, and the expertise you bring to it is different than the person next to you. So even though you're doing the same thing, you could be doing it and looking at it from a very different angle. And, if you were in competition and you weren't willing and open to learn from that, you wouldn't benefit from it. So we can definitely benefit from everyone.
Right. The next section is the build section. So when you walk into a networking event or meet a client for the first time, what do you answer when someone says, so Sue, what do you do?
I try to keep it fairly simple because I'm, believe it or not, quite introverted. And I keep it very simple. So I would say I build valued marketing and sales strategies for small businesses.
Great. And they'd say, okay, great. Well, tell me an example. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, basically, what I think I do is I really want to get to the essence of what individuals do in their business, because I think in small business, the business is an extension of ourselves as a person, and to find out what that is, what the essence of that is, bring those values out, understand them, and build a robust marketing strategy around those values to bring people into what the bottom line is of what you're doing. Not necessarily what you're selling or how you're making your money, but what value do you add? What problems do you solve for your clients? And bring that to the fore more. And that's really what I think we specialise in here in Sassy.
Yeah. And how do you go about doing that?
Well, I spend a lot of time with my clients. I get to know them. So strategy sessions for me is a big thing, because some people are really kind of guarded about those things. It's very hard for people to look at themselves in that way, in a critical way. And I can't tell how many times when I've sat in those and I've really asked them to tell me about themselves, where they just say, well, you're really making this very hard for me. And it is hard for people to reflect on themselves. But, spending time with them, really understanding the why they do what they do and why they spend their days and nights worrying and putting their blood, sweat and tears into their work. And once we get to the bottom of that, the rest is fairly simple.
And I love that 5 whys. I don't know if you've heard that saying of, the 5 whys, really getting to
That's right.
to the core, not just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
As far as making revenue, how do you make revenue in your current business?
Oh, well, making revenue. I suppose once I'm able to show my value in that way, Paul, people tend to engage me into their business and have me work with them and collaborate, and not just in collaborate, but, let me implement some of these strategies and processes in their business to do it. And that's how I make my money at the end of the day. Good. But I'm always very, very, I suppose, in tune with the fact that I need to show clients and businesses where my value sits and what I can do for them, because we're not all things to everyone. And if we try to be all things to everyone, I think we're lying. So to me, it's very important that we find out what the good fit is. And then if that is a really good fit and I show my value, then in turn, I monetize that client.
Yeah, and what are some of the key challenges that small businesses face at the moment when it comes to marketing? What are the things that you're seeing when you go into businesses to help them?
Very, very hard to compete in business today, because everyone is in the digital age, or try to be in the digital age, and the noise on social media and those platforms is so loud that for you to cut through, you need to, I think, be louder than the other ones before you. So for me, I like to help people really work on their thought leadership, really build and get their expertise and their knowledge out there to draw people and attract people to them, rather than pushing a product, pull people towards them.
Great. And what are some of the best ways to create that thought leadership?
There are a great many ways. So you could write blogs or articles that you can put on platforms such as LinkedIn, or on your own blog, on your website. You can share them through any of your social media platforms, but those writings, even through videos. There's a girl that does these great 60-second tip videos about things, and she gives so much information. And if you can check her out, it's Jess Savage at the ABS group if you want to. Great tips that, you don't have to pay for to get. And this is the kind of invaluable kind of information and tips that you can get for people. So short videos you can do yourself. You can do podcasts such as this, Paul. You can do articles written. You can write your own ebooks. So just put your pen to paper, put your thoughts out there, and let people come to you.
Yeah, look, that's great advice. And I think I was only thinking about this today, just, you constantly get asked a question, and certainly in our mastermind, people will ask me a question, I'll give the answer, but, that content typically sits behind a paid wall, I suppose, and it's ways that you can get it out there. And I love that tip around the 60 seconds. We'll put a link to Jess in the show notes, but I think that's it's so much easier to do that.
Yeah.
But why do you think people don't do it? Like, I think it's great advice, but what do you say to the people that just say, look, yeah, I sort of understand that, Sue, but that's not for me. I can't do that.
Yeah, and that is more common than what you may think. It's not common, and it's certainly not. But it's very hard for people to know what should I say. People often know what they know and think that, oh yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean the people around you know it. Just because that's something that's very natural and in tune with you, that's what you actually need to share. So the fear of people not liking you, the fear of people not reading your stuff, the fear of you not gaining a following, fear of people won't like you on video, or fear of you don't like the way you look on video, whatever it might be, that's what stops people. And it's very hard to get started in doing it. But the trick is, like anything else, just start, because once you start to find your rhythm. And you tweak and change as you go, because you will learn as you go. Just start.
Oh, look, great advice. And for me, podcast is a classic example. I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to 2 hours at 2.5 times speed a day, and I love it. But I just constantly found excuses not to put my own podcast out. It was either yes, don't like the sound of my own voice, didn't know what framework or what to do, didn't know what software to use. I'd pull out any excuse not to do it. But as per your advice, I think once you start it, it's great, and you just get better and better at it as you start. And yes, I love John Lee Demas from Entrepreneur on Fire. He's I don't know what he's up to now, about 1,700 episodes or something. But as he says, you go back and listen to his first 10, and he's horrified. But now he's one of the best podcasters in the world, and he hasn't got the best voice, and he hasn't, personally, I think his format is a little challenging, but he just got outside himself. So I think it's great advice for anyone listening, whether you're in corporate thinking to jump. I think, yes, be brave and do it, but also if you're sitting there and you're not getting your marketing right, I think two things. One is, it's not as hard to make a start, and also get someone like Sue to actually help you, because doing it alone can be difficult, but if you actually get someone to help you, it can be great. And just speaking of your ideal client, who are or who's your ideal client, Sue?
My ideal client is typically in the financial sector, obviously because my background is in there. So I tend to attract people in the financial industry to myself, as well as anyone in the professional services industries.
Great. And when you say finance sector, so who's that? Mortgage brokers or?
Mortgage brokers, financial planners, accountants, bookkeepers. That's generally the kind of, I suppose I speak the language. So I really love the industry as well. And it's one that is under constant disruption all the time. So it keeps me busy.
Great. And what's been your biggest learnings as you've gone through this second phase of building your own business?
To not be so hard on myself. It's a big thing, because I suppose I like to succeed like anybody else does. And, we set goals, and we just have to understand that sometimes some goals take a little longer to come to fruition than others. So be patient, keep at it, keep changing, keep learning, and you'll get there.
And what are some of the biggest, so there's some of the biggest learnings, some of the biggest challenges that you currently face in your business?
I suppose I'm in that phase of my business now, Paul, where my business is growing, and I need to once again figure out how I'm going to scale it to be able to still give me some family time and some freedom. So right now I'm just in the process of actually looking at putting on some more people. So for me, that's very key, trying to do that, and also always on the outlook for further collaborations as well to take that pressure off and allow me to grow.
Great. And if I could, have a magic wand out and give you 2 people tomorrow or a couple of people tomorrow, what jobs would you be looking for? Because you just never know who's listening to this podcast. So
Yeah.
type of roles.
Copywriters, great copywriters are very hard to find. So for me, I would really love to connect with some really great copywriters out there. And the other thing is some great digital marketers, because as we know, it is the digital age. And if you're not at the forefront of what's happening out there in the digital age, and that takes up so much time. So we can always need new people in that area too.
Excellent. Well, in our mastermind, we've got a brilliant content writer, and I'll definitely hook you up with him post this podcast. So excellent. And what are some of the impacts of not getting these resources, not getting these people? What's sort of the impact of that?
I suppose you can miss the boat a little bit, especially I feel at the moment that I'm kind of riding a wave, and if you do this well, you'll be able to just ride right into shore, and it'll be nice and seamless. Otherwise, you crash and dunk and you kind of have to start again to build that momentum. And so for me, that's probably the biggest thing right now.
Great. And the next question is around a commercial wage. So are you currently pulling a commercial wage, a wage that was sort of similar to what you were earning back in corporate?
No, because I'm still putting a lot back into my business to scale and grow it. And so I'm not at the same level as what I was when I was in corporate, but I'm not far off it. I could be if I wanted to be a bit more selfish, but I think in the long run, for me to be able to scale my business will be better in the long run for me to not kind of be the absolute pivotal point of my business going forward.
And Craig, you said in the pre-work that Craig is your partner. So if Craig was listening to this podcast today, what would you say to him for the support he's given you through this journey?
I would say thank you for your patience, darling. Thank you for all the support you give, and thank you for being a sounding board at 2 a.m. in the morning when I have a bright idea and need to talk about it with someone. I know it's annoying, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, the next section is the live section. And what are some of the daily habits that you do every day that make you successful?
I get up and I brush my teeth, Paul. Good dental health is key. No, the first thing that I do in the morning when I sit at my desk is I take a look at my to-do list and I plan it and I make sure that it is prioritized properly. So for me, that's one of the biggest things.
Great. And how do you make those decisions? How do you prioritize? How do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing for me because I still sometimes get that wrong. But I kind of look at deadlines for my clients. When are things due? When are things need to be? So if anything of that is on a priority stake, the clients always come first. So they have to be done. And and then I work more towards kind of my medium goals, which is more around making sure that the parts of my own business that I need to manage is done secondly. So it's all about, looking after your big rocks before you start piling in all the little and other tasks that, we like to do first because they're easier, but they're not necessarily getting us where we need to be in the day.
Yeah, and I think the danger of it's brilliant to be so client focused, but I think sometimes if you don't have the right clients or you're always in that mode, you do miss the building of the business, and that's when sometimes it gets difficult to scale.
Yeah.
and that's where you can have burnout, etc. So I think, as you said, having some time in that quadrant 2, which is low urgency, high importance, is important. So the next section is the give section. So what's a cause or a community that you've got some involvement in and you have got a passion for?
It's actually a new cause for me, Paul. It's a group called the Biz Buddy Hub, which is in my area where I live. And the Biz Buddy Hub is, well, they're up to about 114 members now of small business owners in our area. And basically it's all about, living local, working local, spending local, all of that sort of thing. And, I've met some great people in that group. The founder, Sarah Mitchell, is a brilliant woman, and she has got a wealth of knowledge in all areas. So I'm quite passionate about being a big part of that going forward.
And the next and the last section is the action section. So the first question is, what's your number one personal productivity tip?
My personal productivity tip, focus is one thing for me. I'm one of those people that like to think that I can multitask very well. And what I've learned over my time is multitasking is a massive waste of time, because you're never concentrating on one thing till it's finished. You start things halfway through. So my productivity tip is finish what you started and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and we had this debate this morning, or a really good discussion in the mastermind around just marketing. There's just so much to do these days. There's so many things. Do I do Facebook ads? Do I do my website? Do I do my pod? There's just so many options. So I think focusing and getting things right, and focusing on the things that are already within your control, so maybe around a list or something like that, is more important before you chase shiny objects. So I think that's great advice. Next is apps. So what are the apps that you have on your phone or your desktop that make you productive or help make you productive?
So I have my LinkedIn app, which is front and center. To me, LinkedIn helps me kind of really make sure that I'm on top of whatever I need to do for clients, so I can see what everyone's putting on there and writing. So that's one of the first things that I kind of look at during the day. Second is my groups app, which is something that is linked to my Office 365, where I've built groups in my personal platform with all of my clients in, so that I know all of the projects that's on the go currently and the tasks and who's taking care of them. So it doesn't matter if I'm in the office or if I'm at daycare picking up my child. If something isn't done by the time that it needed to be done, it alerts me.
Excellent. Great. And the next is a favourite podcast or book, and why?
Oh, well, it's your podcast, of course, Paul.
Thanks, Sue. The check's in the mail.
No problem.
What other?
Looking out for it. Look, I have to say it's not the coolest thing in the world, but the book that changed my mind and is still not changed my mind, but changed my world, and is still kind of front of mind for me on a very regular basis, is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, by Stephen Covey. And I was introduced to the 7 Habits about 10 years ago when I was working with NAB. They sent me on my first course. And I've never looked back. To me, that book is something that just transcends everything. Even in the last 10 years, I probably refer to it every quarter, and there's always something that I learn about myself every time. And so for me, that's something that I always hold dear.
Yeah, and as we were saying pre-going live, I'm the same. So that book, when I was 18, unfortunately a few years more than 10 ago, really changed my life. And I actually, I do read it all the time. I actually got snippets that I read every day out of that. And I also, when I left Coke, I actually went and became a Franklin Covey trainer.
Wow.
That's how much the book had an impact on me. So, yeah, like you said, a lot of people think it's a little daggy. little past tense, but there's some great principles there that I think are timeless. So
it really concentrates on you and your focus, I think.
Yeah, and I think the world of marketing is much more these days around, understand what the other person wants, understand what their key pain point or problem is, and then find the easiest way to solve it, which is really the essence of
that,
of what that book is. So, Brent, so the last thing is, you've had a wonderful career. You've been in small business. You went back to corporate, back into small business again, had a family. So you've had lots going on in your life. But what's some parting advice you can give the BLG audience?
Oh, just go for it. Take a chance and see what happens. Because if you don't, you'll never know.
Brilliant. Excellent. How can people find out more about you?
Well, they can either find me on my LinkedIn profile, Sue Mills, or on my website, sassy.marketing.
And that and other items that you mentioned in this podcast will be in the show notes as links. So, and as I said to you, I love that sassy.marketing. I think that's fantastic as a domain name. So, Sue, so great to hear your story on the Build, Live, Give show today. Really appreciate you being on here, and we wish you every success, and we look forward to supporting you further in the community.
Beautiful. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Sue. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.